So this video is most likely going to be based off of wishful thinking of the Mets possibly being buyers at the trade deadline. And that being one certain area, the Mets bullpen, which has been pretty horrendous overall. Aside from David Robertson and maybe a little bit of Brooks Raley from time to time, it's been really, really bad. They need to add to this bullpen if they are going to compete and get back into this race. So here are 5 trade deadline targets for the Mets bullpen. So one thing that we have definitely established over this course of the season is that the Mets bullpen, with no Edwin Diaz this year, it lacks a lot of explosiveness. A lot of arms that don't throw very hard, they don't have the best stuff, and some of them that are just too old to kind of adapt to these new roles. One being Acevedo. So you're definitely going to see a pattern, and that being some high-profile stuff that they can add to this bullpen and make them a little bit more strikeout heavy. And all of them are right-handers, so maybe we will make a left-handed version of this later on.
Yeah, the Mets have a max velocity of about 94 in our bullpen, so yeah. Looking for guys who have good, good shankers, good fastballs, and guys that throw 107 because you know what? We just need some throwers.
Not pitchers.
Not pitchers. Just need guys that throw gas and bang some ass.
I mean, anything that could accelerate Drew Smith being gone, anything that could accelerate just all the other minor league relievers that we've seen. So many guys have no business here. Munchkin Man, Lavender, all of them.
So some of these guys are expiring free agents. Some of them have some years of control. Some you most likely will buy low, buy high, and then we also have a grand finale at the end. Let's start with Joe Kelly. If you want to talk about New York personality, this guy probably will fit in pretty well, but that's not really what we're talking about right here. He's a 35-year-old right-hander, definitely a buy low candidate, high reward. Kelly so far has posted a 4.37 earned run average in 22 innings pitched so far, but he does have a sub-3 fielding independent pitching, striking out 30.9% of batters this season. Kelly's 5-pitch mix has a very wide selection of bridge pitches, with his fastball at a career high velocity of 99.1 miles an hour this year. He has a heavy rotation slider, a hard sinker in the high 90s, and a high-profile dropping knuckle curveball that has reached the mid-90s this year. Now, his 2024 club option worth $9.5 million might push the White Sox to move him at his highest value at the deadline.
Made it clear they need some guys who throw 100. Joe Kelly's got it. He's got plenty of playoff experience, which, again, who knows if this team even is going to come close to a goddamn playoff spot. But you know what? If we do, Joe Kelly does have
wishful thinking. Wishful thinking. Wins.
Yeah, we're too negative, guys. We got to be more positive. We're gonna make the playoffs. If they were to get to the playoffs, Joe Kelly plenty of playoff experience, and again, threw like a 96 mile an hour knuckle curve. So we make the joke he's a thrower, and then he doesn't have to come in and need the closer's role, which that's been a topic of discussion with former Mets offseason and trade deadline assets of, he needs the closer role. Joe Kelly can easily just fill the Drew Smith 6th inning role and be fine and be electric, throwing 100 mile an hour sinkers and knuckle curves and everything, and can be a high leverage arm if he need be. And wishful thinking, he'd be the 3rd or 4th guy after Brooks Raley, and if Adam Ottavino turns it around, and obviously David Roberts is the top 5 closer in baseball, but he could just fill that 4th spot, kind of the Drew Smith role of being a 6th inning guy. Second, if Ottavino and Raley and Robertson are available, maybe then he gets the closer role in the 9th inning. And again, more velocity, which this team desperately needs out of the pen. There's nobody better than Joe Kelly. If you just need some dirty Dan throwing 100, knuckle curve, and the slider. He's got a great mix, playoff experience, and he should be cheap. Because again, the White Sox suck. They're worse than us. And they have plenty of relievers that they could move, and they have plenty of long-term contracts to relievers. And if Joe Kelly's good, you have control of it. You want him back next year, $9.5 million club option. If you don't, you just decline the option and boom, he's out of your mind.
Yeah, Joe Kelly, I mean, I definitely like the stuff. It's something that this bullpen doesn't really have right now. Like we said, guys that come in there with the high velocity, it would definitely be a different look than a lot of the other guys that we have in this bullpen. I do love the playoff experience. I think that's something really important, especially when you are in the New York atmosphere. Joe Kelly, he has a lot of personality. So that could always go either way when it comes to coming to New York. I think that, it's tough. I mean, obviously, this is best case scenario. The Mets do turn around and get on a hot streak by trade deadline season. All they need to do is kind of fix the bullpen. Then, yes, he'd be the good addition. I do really like that club option, though, because if he comes here and it doesn't work out, at least you can just kind of wipe your hands clean. But it would be nice that if he does pitch well, then you have another guy that okay, at least he's in the bullpen. Obviously, we're going to have Diaz here for a long time, but it'd be nice to have that other guy. It also makes David Robinson maybe a little more expendable in the offseason. You don't have to worry about trying to bring him back if you already have Joe Kelly here under contract. Other teams are going to be outbidding you for David Robertson. I don't love the age entirely. And like we said, anytime you're in that 35 area, things get tough. But the fact that, like we said earlier, Kelly highest velocity of his career, that's a good sign, though. I mean, as long as if it was the other way where he was like at the lowest velocity of his career, his velocity was decreasing, then the age would be a little more of a concern. But I think the fact that the stuff it still is such a high level that he definitely is something that can help this team out a lot. And like Andrew said, Chicago has no reason to hold on to him. They have plenty of intriguing arms throughout their team that I do like, but he'd definitely be a very nice fit for this team.
Now, Joe Kelly's definitely more of a contract or salary dump of somebody that the White Sox will most likely want to move. So you definitely have some equal leverage. Andrew, what would you think that the ideal trade package or return for Joe Kelly would be?
Like you said, it would be a salary type dump with Joe Kelly, where again he can obviously opt out if the club. Again, there's no point, and they have so much money built into that bullpen. Graveman, Hendricks, again Joe Kelly himself. So they are a team. If they want to get younger, dump this money. It shouldn't cost any. A William Lugo level, maybe a 26th, 7th prospecting system could be a piece, especially on Moncada. William Lugo is years away from big leaguers, but infield depth, because obviously Tim Anderson, free agent, and just being kind of that 26th, 27th man prospect. Maybe if you attach him to another piece, maybe it's a bigger piece, but that's for a video for another time.
So now that brings us to Scott Barlow. Barlow is a 30-year-old right-handed pitcher who the Royals have reportedly already made available in trade talks. Now, Barlow is set to be a free agent after the 2025 season, currently pitching in quite a pivotal year. In 26.2 innings pitched this season, Barlow has posted a 4.05 earned run average, a 3.43 fielding independent pitching, striking out 33% of batters and walking 11.6%. The strikeouts and walks are up this season, as Barlow has recently pivoted to the breaking ball this season. A specialty slider and curveball both drop late on the inner and outer halves of the plate, complemented by a mid-90s horizontal heavy fastball and the occasional sinking two-seam. He's not going to blow you away with high profile, but he knows how to locate for inducing whiffs and chases at a near elite level.
Of the realistic options, the last controllable for multiple year guys on this video, 30-year-old, again, which will have a last year arbitration. So that number this year was at 5.3. Most likely, probably pushing north of 6 in arbitration next year. So again, have team control, which the Mets could use. Again, they have a lot of pending UFAs in the bullpen and a lot of question marks. Having a guy who could potentially you could pencil in. Again, middle relief to high leverage arms. This is the kind of guy who, on a good night, could be the 6th inning if you're going well. But also you could trust in a high-leverage setup role in the 8th. And that's what the Mets continue desperately needing. Yes, do they need the front-end guys? And, when healthy, we got the best reliever in baseball. And then you just got to, he trickles down everybody else and moves everybody else down. But having a guy like Scott Barlow, again, we were high on him last year at the trade deadline. And the Royals, like Carson said, they've already made him available. And you could attach him to another piece, which the Royals are trying to, with another reliever. Not on this video, because we respect women, but has been in talks to being attached and potentially getting 2 for 1. We'll see the value of the other guy. But again, it's cheap asset management of, hey, if he's great, guess what? You have him for next year too. And even if he's bad, hey, you have him for next year. But hey, you need to use him in the Drew Smith. We keep bringing the Drew Smith roll-up. Okay, he's the 4th or 5th guy in the bullpen. If Scott Barlow's your 4th or 5th guy in your pen, that's a pretty good damn pen, where he could just be that group B If you need him in high leverage, he can give you high leverage. But if he's, in a, not to say mop-up role, but hey, he's in the 6th inning, it's a pretty good spot for Scott Barlow. So again, guy with term, younger side, like I said, 30 years old, and potentially comes for a 2-for-1. If we like that, again, future video ahead.
Yeah, I definitely think that this is something that deepens the back end more than just adds to your bullpen. Edwin Diaz returning is definitely another thing that you can look at, of Barlow being added to a possible, when it's good, maybe a possible 5-headed monster, because Barlow could close. He definitely could close. He could be in tons of different situations.
Yeah, I definitely like the age much better on this one, being 30 compared to 35. We've said when it comes to any aspect of this Mets team, have to get younger, and especially in the pitching department. So Barlow would accomplish that. I do like the closing experience if needed, but anything that gets rid of Drew Smith, it has to happen, because like we said, Drew Smith has been given opportunity after opportunity year after year, yet somehow is still here. So if we could do something about that, so we do have someone who is pretty reliable, that could pitch in a lot of different scenarios and is making those adjustments along his career to become a better pitcher, that's something that we really could use. And hopefully Hefner or whoever the Mets pitching coach is can capitalize off that and keep him going in the right direction. Because, I would hate to see where you have a guy who's made an adjustment and he's pitching better, and then the Mets get their hands on him and like, oh, well, let's try this, and then they ruin the guy. Because like we said, a lot of times Mets pitching development has not been good. Seems a lot of times guys doing well comes to the Mets, they do worse, they leave, all of a sudden they find success. So I'm curious to see if the Mets would be able to kind of build off of that, off those changes and tweaks that Barlow has made this season.
I think if you were to compare this to anything that the Mets did recently, it probably is something of a middle relief, being like a Michael Givens trade that they did last year. I mean, something that, it's not going to cost much because it is a buy low, but someone who has had experience doing a lot of different roles out of a bullpen. So definitely somebody that you can add, but it's more of deepening the bullpen than just adding full-on star power of let's replace Edwin Diaz because he's injured. So now the third of the 5 trade options for this bullpen for a Cardinals team who has been just god awful. That being the overpowering explosive reliever, Jordan Hicks. Now, he is definitely one of the main pieces that you were expecting in the Cardinals' fire sale at the deadline. Hicks is an explosive 26-year-old reliever, another buy low candidate who's had a lot of health problems and inconsistencies, but he still has a tremendous amount of upside. Hicks has posted a 4.02 earned run average in 31.1 innings pitched this year, pitching to a 3.28 fielding independent pitching, striking out 34.3% of batters. Walks are definitely an issue, but his overly explosive repertoire is extremely redeeming in opponent quality of contact. Hicks has a heavy running sinker and a four-seam fastball that both cap out at 102 to 103 miles an hour. He has an explosive sweeping action slider with high RPMs and a hard low 90s changeup with late fading drop. With the Cardinals way out of contention and Hicks set to become a free agent after this season, his market is definitely wide open.
Throwing 106 seems like every night. Again, he's had plenty of Tommy Johns and being injured and missing pretty much 2 years and then coming back. And Luis Guillorme giving him a 22-pitch AB, his first outing back. But we saw him live, and we saw him last week just shoving and throwing 104-mile-an-hour sinkers. And again, that's what Jordan does. And the Cardinals were stupid in trying to make him a starter, and now he's back in the bullpen. Now he's middle reliever. Now he's back to be the closer. Ryan Helsley being injured has given him that opportunity. Giovanni Gallegos just sucking and letting him just be the closer. 26 years old and plenty of career ahead of him. And you put him in a potential, again, we don't have the greatest pitching factory, but his walks are down this year than most of his career years. Most of his career, the walks are down. And again, that raw untapped velocity. Yeah, is he one pitch away from blowing out his elbow? Yeah. But you would take the 40 innings or 45 innings before of just pure, he's going to walk people. And that's been the biggest issue with him. This year's been better. But that just pure velocity. And he just doesn't know where the hell it's going. And when he's going right, the sinker's just evading barrels and he's just striking everybody out. And that's the Mets kind of need is unbelievably, he's a pending UFA. So how the Cardinals have pissed away his service time is genuinely hysterical. But obviously, he's missed some time with injuries. But again, Cardinals don't have any need for him. Neither is the other closer, which their other guy who is a reliever of the year nominee. But Jordan Hicks would be a guy, have a bad contract as well. But hell, if you're getting Hicks, you're using him for that setup role and moving Adam Ottavino down. He is a high leverage arm. Does he have a little bit of Adam Ottavino in him? But he'll have days where he just cannot find the strike zone. Yeah, but he's limited him this year. How much of this is what he could potentially be in the future? He is, again, a guy that I'm risking it all for and say, hey, again, the velocity is just needed in this pen. And it would be, oh, Brooks Raley, 3/4 funky delivery? Okay, now here's Jordan Hicks. Have fun coming out of the bullpen. If David Robertson's still here, that, spin rate knuckle curve. So, again, high leverage arm, 26 years old, the second youngest guy on this list. It sucks, again, he's a pending UFA, but if you can get him for a playoff run, he can change the dynamic of a series by just, in a couple of outings can make a complete difference to a series.
No, this is a guy I really, really like. We talked about Barlow 30. I mean, we're getting even better now looking at age 26. And what I like so much about Jordan Hicks, that even despite all the injuries, the surgeries, everything we talked about, he's throwing as hard as ever. So, we've seen other guys, good example, someone like Noah Syndergaard. He threw hard, injuries happen, all of a sudden velo gone. Hicks has had the injuries, but velo went up. So this is a guy that, because he is so young, he still is able to overcome that. And I think that, the Mets are in such a desperate need of somebody like this who could throw so hard. He's worth the risk because there is that high upside. And it's about time that we take a risk with a young guy. Instead of taking a risk with an old guy, how about take a risk with a young guy who actually has really good upside? And I think that's something that, UFA, what have you, when we do our off season, like, who's on your radar, who's guys that you really want to target, he's really high on my list. He's a guy that in the off season I'm really looking at because, like Andrew said, the way the Cardinals absolutely butchered his service time compared to the Mets, to go back to Drew Smith. Drew Smith been here a million years and then is still under contract for a couple more. Meanwhile, Hicks is a free agent. So something like that is just really appealing. And I wonder what he even gets on the open market, something like that. Because we saw some of the deals that got offered last year, particularly with what the Padres did. That's something that's a little concerning, But again, with that age, it's always a good idea where there's something that I always like to think of is that you bring him in and you find out if he fits as a Met and if he fits in New York, because it's such a big thing. Because I'd rather make the trade. Maybe I lose a prospect or two, but I make the trade. I found out if he even works out, because I'd rather lose a prospect and Hicks struggles than have 3 years of Hicks just struggling. I'd rather just have that half a season where he's struggling, like, okay, it didn't work, let's not re-sign him. But if I keep my prospects and then I have this guy for 3 years blowing games, I'm like, well, now I screwed myself. So he's a guy that I really would love to add, whether the Mets are in it, whether the Mets are out of it. Obviously, the Cardinals are out of it. So I think that he will be on that market. If the Mets have to take any, or if the Mets could just take any contract with them just to get this guy on here. He's someone I really like because, like we said, you need to be thinking more long-term. He can help you now, and he can help you in the future.
If this guy was coming to us as being one of our young starters, I would be like, hell no. Doesn't have command issues. Unlike that other guy that everybody was claiming for in the offseason, this big project known as Alex Reyes, that's a different story. This guy actually has command and knows how to actually locate, but he's got some control issues. It happens. That's what relievers are. That's why they're relievers, because they have control issues. If you're talking about explosiveness with some arms that we do have, this is someone to possibly help build it around. I mean, if you want your high-profile stuff, you want your young guys, I mean, hopefully Bryce Montes-Gayoka can come back healthy. You do have the health risk, but they're young and they're talented, and they're guys who have upside. So I'm hoping that we do go after some young arms like this. And that's one of the main reasons why I hope we're in playoff contention, because they actually do start looking at arms like this. But maybe, we'll see what they do, because I'd love to add some explosiveness. I would love to go from the meatball throwing Tommy Hunter to an actual someone who actually knows how to dominate, which you actually need to do with high profile velocity in this game. Let's get to the fourth on this list, and that being Daniel Bard. This is an interesting one because he has fallen off overall as a pitcher, but he's still getting some decent results in Colorado. He's 37 years old, and he has posted a 1.52 earned run average, 23.2 innings pitched this year, and striking out 22.1% of batters while still managing contact fairly well. Bard's fastball velocity has dropped off quite a few ticks from 97.9 to 94.8, but his signature hard cutting slider and high spin slurve have been still at peak performance. Although he hasn't had the best year, it's a buy low candidate, $9.5 million a year AAV that the Mets have financial flexibility to take on. This is an arm who has had success before and might need to just get out of Colorado to continue that success this year.
Bard is a guy that, he's had success the past couple of years. He's gotten the high strikeouts. Anytime you're looking at a guy from Colorado, there are those concerns a little bit. How will it translate? Adam Ottavino, he did really well with that Coors Field air. He's translated into a good Met, so you hope that the same can happen with Bard. But, the anxiety thing, it is a concern only because when it comes to New York, there is very high anxiety. And we saw with Daniel Vogelbach needing a week of a mental break. We joke about it, but it's something that's going to happen. We see a lot of guys like Drew Smith, who blocks me on Twitter. If Daniel Bard comes to New York and he has a couple bad outings, he's going to get booed off the field. We saw Jerry's Familia take a very hard time from whether it's people online that, do these crazy Familia songs and things like that. I don't think for Bard personally, this would be the greatest fit for him. If Colorado is looking to move on from him, since Colorado's out of it, he's a bit of an older arm. So he does have the stuff. He definitely could be of use. But again, I think I'm looking at probably the younger guys more so than him. And I wonder, what the Mets would have to give up in order to get somebody like him. I don't think he's a guy that, we're going to get, whether it's in this video and videos in the future, about taking on bad contracts to acquire. I don't think Bard is worth taking a bad contract to get, So I think it really depends. Unless they can get him for absolutely nothing as far as prospect wise, then I'd consider it. But other than that, it definitely would be a bit of a risky one.
Now, Andrew, you had some specific reasons as to why you did put this guy and featured him on this list. I mean, one of my main reasons is just the Colorado Rockies are just stupid.
Again, it's Colorado. They were stupid enough. We thought that they would trade him last year. Then they gave him a 2-year extension. He also has a $9.5 million option for next year as well. So again, Frank brought up the anxiety issue. If it is an issue, the Mets can easily wipe their hands of it next year with the club option. And yes, is there some bad contracts that potentially can lower his value even more? Yeah, again, future video talking about that soon. But again, he would not come in as the closer. And as of now, he's not the number one setup man. That would still be Adam Ottavino. But again, we're looking positively. Maybe he turns it around in July, once the weather really warms up. And he can get more control of that slider. And then becomes the guy he was last year. It's a veteran arm, which that's been this thing. I know Frank about sports, the dinosaur is scared of old relievers. The way of it is to go younger. And yes, his velocity is down. So that's the opposite of Joe Kelly, who we talked about earlier, is Bard is going the other way. But he's having good success in Colorado. All right, let's piss off the comment section.
All right, let's go. So let's get to the Holy Grail. Pipe dream at this point. Mets got to start playing a lot better if they're going to do this one. But let's talk about Emmanuel Clase. We all know how good Emmanuel Clase is. He is a 25-year-old explosive right-hander who is definitely been seen as a pipe dream, but also could be a focal point of a selling Cleveland team. Clase has had yet another fantastic season, posting a 2.55 earned run average, a 2.60 fielding independent pitching, striking out 22.2% of batters in 35.1 innings pitched. Last year, Clase signed a 5-year, $20 million extension with club options for 2027 and 2028, giving him a massive amount of trade value. He's a 2-pitch reliever with a high 90s cutter that touches 101 to 102 and a high-profile slider with extra horizontal break. He can induce those ground balls with great command, but he has definitely not pitched to his peak this year. but the upside, we all know, will continue to be there for years to come. This is definitely going to take a huge trade package, but Clase could definitely help the Mets bullpen's lack of explosiveness.
Comment section, go nuts. Here's why his name is on here. John Heyman was the one who brought this up about a week ago on MLB Now. Was talking with Lauren Shahadi about relievers on the market. You got Scott Barlow, you got all these Chapman guys that we've talked about on this list. And then he just throws this very interesting nugget when he got to the Cleveland Guardians about they're going to listen to Shane Bieber. If they're going to trade Shane Bieber, and they're going to continue to flip some assets, pitchers not named Tristan McKenzie, why hold on to your stud reliever? And yes, he's got 5 years of team control, which there's no rush for the Cleveland Guardians to trade him. But why would Heyman even bring up Clase's name? Nobody was going to bring him up. You know, you got idiots on the Daily News saying, oh, Alexis Diaz, that's a fucking pipe dream. That's stupidity. And that's on equal value to Emmanuel Clase. And I think there's higher upside in a guy like Emmanuel Clase. And if you're going to give up Kevin Parada or whoever, this is the guy I'm going for. Yes, Alexis is nice, but Emmanuel Clase can give you the best 1-2 punch in baseball with him and Edwin Diaz.
It's hard to say no to the talent of Emmanuel Clase. My only issue is that, again, so if the Mets are good, like that's the big if, it makes a ton of sense. But you know, we made a video about David Robertson possibly being available on the Mets side. There's no lead to protect. That's the only issue, is that, you know, if Tyler McGill or Max Scherzer or Verlander gets bombed, and you're giving up 6 runs, Clase and Diaz ain't going to help you, you know? So I think, like, that's why we said, like, if the Mets ever got it going, if Scherzer was consistent and Verlander was consistent and Senga was consistent and then Quintana came back and was doing well, Carson was doing, all those things are going well, and the Mets are actually scoring runs consistently, I'm all for it. It's just, to me, I think that, like, when it comes to, if you have to get rid of a Parada level talent, I think the Mets have bigger issues that I'd rather have Parada help solve than the bullpen. No, I know. I'm going to trade him, but not for a reliever. I'm good to trade him. Not
no, give me the lead.
Yes.
No, he can go. He can go.
Yes.
Him product such a bit. No, he can go for literally nothing.
Listen,
literally trade him for.
But I'm not trading him for Clase.
Clase's on a bargain right now. He's making $4 million a year.
And exactly, Clase's on one of the best contracts for a reliever. We're paying our reliever $20 million.
I know, but we're talking about this particular Mets team. Again, Clase's contract is amazing. But right now, the Mets need Devers way more than they need Clase.
This is more of obviously more of a long-term type of thing of the next 5 years of guys who are going to be under contract. So what I'm thinking here is this is obviously a pipe dream. So I have pipe dream status going on here. Let's say we have Clase and we have Diaz next year. Mr. David Stearns comes in and he has his Devin Williams and Josh Hader to build around with pitching. I mean, let's say that's a possibility. And that's the only way that I see this. Again, we're talking about a pipe dream here. It's not going to happen, but let's say we're being hopeful. We're being hopeful here that the Mets somehow turn it around and are buyers at the deadline. But who the hell knows? The pitching's been a problem. If you want to improve the pitching, this is somewhere to start. There's also some rotation things, which we'll talk about later on. The Mets definitely need to make improvements if they are going to compete, whether they're going to buy or whether they're going to sell or retool.